Denitresse Ferrell, transformation strategist and success coach. And joining me is my good girlfriend and fellow career coach, Samantha Pitre Quillen. Samantha, would you like to make an introduction?
Sure. First, let me say thank you. I'm super excited to be joining you and your community. So thanks for having me. My name is Samantha Pitre Quillen. I am the founder and CEO of Creating Miss Jones, and we are a career and executive coaching firm that really seeks to do three things. One, to have folks create the jobs and professional careers of their imagination. We also seek to make sure that we help and coach and support women who are looking to get seats at the table, and not just to get seats at the table, but to really leverage their voice and understand how important their seat is at the table and why they are necessary as part of the conversations that need to be happening throughout our work worlds. And our final piece is to really help people understand how to become SMEs, subject matter experts, in their fields, whether they're the intern or the CEO. And so we really seek to leverage those three components of your professional career and really help you understand that this isn't climbing the corporate ladder. This is really navigating the corporate jungle gym. And we think that we do that really well for our clients and really provide a lot of support and foundational knowledge to them as they build their careers.
Awesome. So Samantha and I are in a, what are we calling it? Accountability partnership. And we were having one of our weekly chats and thought that the conversation we were having around questions we were getting from our clients would be very valuable to a broader audience, especially in our current environment as we're all trying to navigate through the new normal created by COVID-19. So what we're planning to do today is just welcome you into our own private chat. And we're going to talk about some of the top questions we've been getting, and you will get a bit of insight into our thoughts around them.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've been hearing a lot, and I know from conversations that you had, were that we're hearing a lot about how do I launch, right? So people are getting laid off, they're getting, their roles are being terminated, and they're launching directly into their job search, right? It's like, hey, let me get to Indeed ASAP, let me shake off an old resume, change some dates, and let me get right in the swing of it. So, and they're looking at this point for any job, right? I just need a job. We've heard that a billion times between the two of us. Talk to the folks a little bit about the dangers of this, I just need a job, any job mindset, and how that can ultimately really hinder a job search for folks.
Yes. So many people are finding that they're back in the job search for the first time in years, maybe even a decade or so. And so how you go about getting a job has changed significantly. One thing that is critically important at the onset is that you are crystal clear on what you really truly want to do, what your strengths and skill sets are, and how those can be best leveraged in the marketplace. And so you don't want to just throw your resume out and see what sticks. What you want to do is be very targeted. You want to target roles, skill sets. You want to target companies, right? In light of COVID-19, companies are showing us their true colors. Some are shining and some aren't. And so you want to be crystal clear on which companies you want to work with, right? And which companies you don't want to work with, because it would be a tragedy to launch into a new role and be miserable just as or more miserable in your new role than you were before. So take this opportunity to really get clear on what it is you are supposed to be doing, what really maximizes your scope of genius, where you will perform best. And that is from a role perspective, a skill set perspective, interest, sort of where your passion and interest aligned, and a company perspective.
Yeah, that's great. And I think what I would also want to say is one of the things when you do this, any job, kind of throw your resume and see what sticks, you're wasting so much valuable time. You know, finding a job can be a full-time job and the way you kind of make it a little bit more of a manageable bite is if you're really, really focused on, like you said, specific jobs, specific skill sets, specific companies, as opposed to 4 and 5 endless hours on Indeed or LinkedIn or any other even specialty job boards. That's where you get the burnout from a job search, is because you literally are sitting in front of your computer for hours on end, repeatedly putting out, applications. Yeah. And you're not getting responses back, or you're not getting positive responses back. But that comes because you're not targeted. And so the targeting is really what's key and really what prevents burnout from a job search.
Absolutely.
So that's really, really great. I have been hearing a lot about, this kind of idea of like, hey, I just go out. I found all of my jobs I've found on my own. Nobody ever helps me. The only person I can depend on is me. Or that notion of like, what can someone else tell me about me or about my career or about my job search? So talk a little bit about, I know you have great insight, and you answered this question. I actually took notes the last time we were talking. And you answer this question better than I do. But talk to people about the power of their network and the power of the network during times like this, right? Where they really have the questions, unknowns, COVID-19, the possibility of an economic downturn. So talk about your network and about, all of the pieces that go with kind of networking in this conversation.
Yes, I will say not even one of the biggest mistake I see job transitioners make is not activating or leveraging their network effectively. Your network makes the difference in whether that resume gets read or not, whether you get an interview call or not. Listen, they are, you can apply on Indeed, you can apply on LinkedIn, you can apply on a company's website, and maybe your resume passes through the filter if you're lucky. And there's a small number of resumes that pass through that filter. But if you're just risking it all on your resume passing through the filter, you're open to far more risk than I am. Because here's what you need, right? People want to work with and hire people who they know, or they know that someone can vouch for them, right? This is the environment of sort of social capital, and you want someone to vouch for you. And here's how you build it. So maybe you don't have a network already. You want to, or you think you don't have a network, because I promise you, you probably do. You want to first think about everybody that you know, that you've worked with, that you went to school with, that was your professor, your neighbor, all of those people. Think about those folks, and let them know that you're back in the job search, right? Because you never know, just that one initial thought, hey, I am looking for a job, can spark something from one of them that could help you. A lot of us listen to music and we listen to lyrics. I think Lil Wayne said something like, real G's move in silence like lasagna. First of all, I don't know how lasagna moves, but that's a whole nother conversation. But one, we're not G's. We trying to get a job. Two, you can't move in silence. Somebody needs to know that you are looking for an opportunity, because you can't hire yourself. So somebody needs to know that you're looking for something. So everybody that you know, needs to be looped into the fact that you are in need of another position. And if you find yourself not crystal clear, right, back to that clarity discussion that we just had, if you find yourself not crystal clear on what it is that you want to do, then you can also leverage that network. So you're reaching out, you're saying, well, what is it that you do? Having those informational interviews is going to be very key. Looking at folks who have job titles that might interest you, and really getting an understanding of the ins and outs, the day-to-day of that role, so you can ascertain if it's a good fit, if the companies that you're looking for are a good fit. And then finally, so you're talking to everybody that you know, you're having some informational interviews, you're asking them who else they know that you should be talking to. And then your last step, right? If you're applying for a job, you need to start looking at on LinkedIn people at that company with titles similar to the one that you're looking for, people at that company with a recruiter, talent acquisition title, and you are making connections in that talent acquisition lead. You're reaching out to them and you're saying, hey, by the way, I just applied to this job. This is who I am, a little bit about myself. Hope that you have a chance to look at my resume. If you need anything else, right? You're reaching out and you're having those conversations and you're building that connection, because right now it's real and you want to do any and everything that you can to stand out from the crowd. It matters immensely if your resume just came through a filter, or if your resume was emailed by an employee at that company, or emailed by a friend of the HR manager, or emailed by another trusted colleague. It makes the whole difference. So no, you can't do it all by yourself. You can't hire yourself, sweetie.
No, that's great. And I want to also just say, one of the things that companies you can't learn about unless you know someone on the inside is culture. And I feel like every 20 minutes we hear a client come back talking about toxic culture.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can't find out about the toxicity of a culture if you don't know someone on the inside. Because that's not, nobody says I snore in their marketing literature, right? Like nobody says we micromanage. Like that's never going to be on a website. That's never going to be anywhere. And just looking at places like Glassdoor, I don't think is as representative as actually talking to someone, ideally who works on that team in that department, but at least who works for the company.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to your point, it's so critical that you leverage your network. And I also want to say one more thing about leveraging your network. Your network can also give you, if you're talking about career transitions, and this I think flows into what my second question for you was going to be, which is they can give you insight about the industry or the role specifically. So while I might think if I want to be a project manager in real estate or construction, that the best thing to do is to run back and go get, and go back and get a PMP certificate. But someone who is a project manager in real estate or construction can say to me, hey, look, you know what? PMP programs are typically very technical and we are not very technical. So if you're going to go get one, go get this type of one.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're going to go do, same thing for technology. I hear people all the time say, oh, I want to go into tech, right? So they just start taking certifications without a real plan. So now I've wasted money, I've wasted time. And if they were talking to someone who was a UI UX designer, for instance, if that's what they want to do, they could give them real direction around this is what you need to know, HTML, CSS, as opposed to some other, Python or something else. So I think to your point, the network can really save you time and frustration though.
Yes.
And sometimes just having that conversation and saying to folks, well, I'm thinking about this. What are your thoughts? Industry insiders can give you some feedback like, hey, I wouldn't waste my time with that. I would instead focus over here. Or, the shift for the industry is really coming to this, right? So I would cut out all of that and go in this direction. But they'll know that because they have a pulse on the industry and on the day-to-day operation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then also your people are, many of us are introverted and a lot of times, reaching out, especially if it's a cold contact, we just feel really anxious about that. But I have never met a person who was not happy to talk about themselves and what they do. And so people are excited to share with you what they know and give advice. So rest assured that the bulk of the people that you reach out to are going to be open and willing to share, because everyone likes talking about their successes and giving advice. I don't know the psychology behind it, but I know that it works.
Yeah, you're really, really right. Spot on. No, and I think everyone loves to share whatever they know, right? So even if you start out asking people for book recommendations or, any of those kinds of things, right? People have like this whole laundry list of stuff. And they're instantly like, oh, you're interested in that?
Mhm.
Here, let me send you, half a dozen articles or lists or books or, blogs or podcasts to support something we've talked a lot about during our accountability calls has been this idea that people who are looking to transition into another role have to kind of always go back to one.
Mhm.
So if I was a nurse and I want to get out of active nursing, the only thing for me to do now is either go back to school or go to an entry level role. Can you talk a little bit about the sort of idea of transferable skills and
Mhm.
how people can really leverage those in a job search?
Yeah. So, and this is where the first two main points really come into play. So, first, getting crystal clear on what are the experiences that you've already had? What are the skills that you've already developed? What are your strengths? Which of those do you actually enjoy? And then what is needed for the next thing that you're trying to do? There are going to be some things that are next that you're going to need to go retool. Retooling does not necessarily mean you need to go get another degree. Maybe it's a certification, maybe it's a class, maybe it's a webinar or training or something like that, just to get a little bit more comfortable in, maybe a system or something like that. But you never really know for sure until you actually do the research. You have to be very clear what it is you're trying to do, and you have to know yourself. You have to know what experiences you've had, what skills you've developed, and that's where having those conversations comes into play, because talking to someone else, they can help make connections. Oh, well, you did this. That requires the similar skill set to when we do this, right? And they can help you make those connections of your transferable skills to the next thing. But you shouldn't have to start over, right? Unless you have been in, let's say, an accountant and now you want to go be a surgeon. Yeah, you probably gonna have to go to med school, but that's not usually the transition that most of us are making. And so you can ease in with some transferable skills at probably a lateral level, a level that's sort of comparable to where you're coming from, the industry that you're coming from, and then you can start to build that new industry specific skill set there. You do a lot of these skills are common. They're transferable. You need to be analytical. You need to be computer savvy. You need to build relationships. You need to build trust, influence without authority, right? These are skills that you are able to build and leverage regardless of what job you're in. And they are valuable regardless of which job you're going to. And so being very clear on what your transferable skills are and the needs of the next role are going to be critical. And then also just a reminder, you do not have to have 100% of the skills listed on the job posting, okay?
Say that
Trust
again.
yourself.
I just need you to say that again because
Do
I
not.
find so many people not applying to roles because they don't meet every single thing on a job description. So say that again.
You don't need to have it all. You do not need to have it all. We train, everybody trains. You can learn on the job. You need to have a foundation, a solid enough foundation where you know that you can ramp up with the right things in place, with the right training, the right support, and then you just shoot your shot. People that are getting these jobs don't have 100% of, they have 60%, and they had a network and they sold themselves. That's what's making the difference. It's not that you checked every single box on the job description.
And I would even go a step further and say, having been a recruiter for about 7 years, the other piece about the job description is it's literally the unicorn. Literally the unicorn. That's what a hiring manager has sat down and said. What are all the things that I would love for the person who does this role? So unless you were sitting there and you literally were created in a test tube, because who does every single thing that somebody else dreams of? out of their head. So it's really a unicorn. And hiring managers know that they're never going to find someone who has 100% of those characteristics and skill sets. So you are 1,000% right that, 60, 70% and a real eagerness to learn and a real adaptability, that is going to take you, if you can sell yourself and get your network to talk about how fast of a learner you are and how innovative you are and creative and just sort of intellectually curious, that's going to take you so much further than trying to get every single skill that's on that job description.
Exactly. Let's put you in the hot seat.
Okay.
So one thing that there's all of these career counseling services popping up, right? And, many people think that a resume is all that they need. And so you did it yourself or you hired someone else. Is that all you need? Or is there some other tools and services that you should be looking out for to optimize your job search?
So I personally, and not because I'm a coach, but just in general, I think a coach is so important. And the reason I think a coach, and if you can't hire a success coach or a career coach, the second best thing is to really enter into an accountability team with another job seeker or with another friend or industry leader or industry insider colleague. And what I really think in a job search you need first is you need someone who is helping you to really think about things in more than one way, from more than one angle. You really need to hear, I find for my clients, part of my biggest value is just repeating what I heard them say, or restating and rethinking something that they have done. I also think you need someone who is holding you accountable. This, for as much as job seeking is about your resume and your skills, it's about how you are leveraging getting those skills and that resume in front of the right people. And that is hugely labor intensive. I personally think if you're not spending 8 hours a week on your networking and on whether that's in-person meetings or virtual now in COVID-19, but whether that's meetings or emails or any number of things, if you're not spending 8 to 10 hours a week doing that, you're not doing enough. And having said that, if you are not researching and really thinking about, for companies you want to work for, what are their core values? What is it that they find really important? How am I developing my value proposition to those companies? How am I articulating my value proposition? How am I positioning myself, for instance, right? I know a lot of people are not leveraging LinkedIn, for instance.
Right.
LinkedIn lets you put articles, thought pieces on their site. That's their platform. So you don't even need a separate blog for that. That's a way for you to really strut your stuff from an industry perspective. So and that takes work, right? That takes time. So I guess what I'm saying is you need someone who's holding you accountable to put in the work and the time, and who's really looking and saying, hey, you've had this article thing you're supposed to be writing on LinkedIn for 2 weeks, right? When are we going to get off this, right? Or someone who's saying, hey, I think you're putting too much pressure, or I think you're not thinking about this correctly, or I think you're approaching this from the wrong angle. What happens if we shift it and think about it from this perspective? So I think your resume is important, and I'm certainly, always gonna advocate that if there's something you feel like, a professional resume writer could do better than you, then sure, spend the money. But at the same time, I think that a coach who can really explore what you want to do, who can pull out some deeper things and some deeper meanings, a resume writer is really just going to hand you back this list of stuff that you told them. I always find clients that walk in and say, I need to find a copyright job. Okay. So we spend 2 or 3 weeks talking through this copyright job, only to come down and say, oh, so we didn't really want a copyright job. We really want a marketing job. We want a content marketing job, or we want, something else, right? And some of that is because if you just sit down and tell a resume writer, I want a content marketing job, or I want a copyright job, he or she is just going to write a copywriter's resume.
Mm-hmm.
When you sit down and say to me, I want a copyright job, I start teasing this out and saying, why? What do you really want to do? And I also start to ask some really other probing questions. What do you want to do in 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do in 5 years? Why? What are the skills you want to be doing? What are the projects you want to be working on? And then I found you actually a whole different job.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people, and you say this all the time, you say people do what they've always done because that's what they've known. So I think when you take a step back and get in a position where someone can help you really drill down a little bit and think more broadly, that's more, if you're paying for something, I think that's going to be a more valuable service than a resume writer.
Yeah, and you've got to think that the resume is just one piece of marketing collateral. What you really need to be successful in your job search is a strategy. And so that's what your coach is. That's what your accountability partner can help you with. If you're naturally great at sort of planning and setting very motivating goals, you can sort of do it on your own, but you need someone that's going to help you develop a very robust job search strategy and then be there with you along the way as you work through it. And whoever that person is, right? But just a resume, just a cover letter, that's not going to get you anywhere.
Well, and I just want to say this about a cover letter, right? I was a recruiter for 7 years. I can tell you, I can probably count on my 2 hands the number of cover letters I read. That's not a place, but that's something that someone with experience like yourself, like me, can really share with you, as opposed to, and I think it goes back to your earlier point, the way we used to find a job is not the way we currently find a job. Mm-hmm. It's just not. Yeah. I remember when Career Builder, I'm dating myself, but Career Builder was the biggest thing, and LinkedIn was a new kid on the block. And now, I don't even think that Career Builder exists anymore. And LinkedIn is like the biggest rate. So that just, again, we remember when you used to, there's no, for most companies, that portal, without someone on the inside, which is why your networking is so important, you can't get past that portal to even get to a real person unless you're networking. So yeah, that's really important too.
Yep. Good stuff. Okay. So, there are so many of us with side hustles. And so if you found yourself now out of a full-time and you really want to work and build your business and you don't want to go back into the workforce, but your business can't sustain you, sort of what guidance do you suggest for those folks?
I'm usually, if your business can't sustain you and you've crunched your numbers and you really have looked at it and you say, my business is just not at a point to, for me to come out and provide full-time money, I give you a couple of options. So one is what I call a just for now role. Mm-hmm. So a role that you can do now, right? You can find, you can apply to, you can do. I even think maybe sometimes those are lateral, or even sometimes maybe a step down where you can divest a little bit of your professional emotions, mm-hmm. not into a role. So, right, if you are a director now and you see that, you come home and you just don't have the energy or the capability, maybe step down to a manager. Sort of curtail your resume to kind of take a step back so you don't have to put that investment of time in. But so I call those just for now roles. And a just for now role is really going to become the next or first investor in your business. Notice what I said, investor, not client, but investor. So you're going to take resources that you're getting from that job. And you're going to invest them in your business. You're going to invest them in whether that's building your email list, whether that's designing your programs or your product offerings, whatever it is, you're going to leverage that job to invest in your company so that your company can get to a point where it supports you full time and you can get out of the job market altogether. The other thing I'm going to say is, if your business is not able to sustain you full time, look for roles that are going to support what you're trying to do. So if you have a tangible product and you've been an accountant, maybe you don't look for accounting roles. Maybe you look for supply chain roles. Mm-hmm. Maybe you look to transition yourself into supply chain. Maybe you look to transition yourself into marketing, mm-hmm. into HR, right? Into something else that you're going to need for your business to be successful. And you want to gain that knowledge, gain those experience, gain that information. And you can do that while, going to work and then growing your business on the side. And lastly, what I'll say is, I think the other pieces, and this comes down, I'm kind of old school from the perspective of, I'm really a time block, color code kind of girl. And I think you need to look at where you're spending your time, mm-hmm. right? Because a 9 to 5 should be a 9 to 5. And if you're doing 9 to 7, you need to look at that. Maybe you're taking on roles that have too much responsibility, too many deliverables, and you need to find a role where you can come home and organize your time so that you can do the things for your business that you need to be doing. The other piece is, how are you leveraging, I don't want to say every minute, but at least most of your time? Because I find that people are, not taking lunch, but then surfing, Facebook and IG while they're eating their lunch, right? That's not a good use of time. Especially if your focus, you want to build this business, maybe you should be focused on your sales funnel during your lunch hour, on your networking during your lunch hour, listening to podcasts on your commute, those kinds of things. So I really think that as people develop their side business, they need to think about, how can I get this 9 to 5 job to give me what I need to grow my business? How do I, because moving forward is not just, hey, I'm selling my product. I'm gaining the skills that I need to grow and scale and sell my product. And my last little piece of hint is, look for ways that you can start and grow small. So while you're at work, maybe your capacity isn't 25 clients, but if you can get 5 and really work with them diligently and develop your product offerings and really have a framework, you can probably next year move to a part-time job with a full-time, with more input on your business and sort of transitioning over time. Also get creative. I think we're going to see an infusion of remote jobs. So is there a way that maybe you can work remotely in something similar to what you're doing now? And while you have a solid 9 to 5, I'm going to tell you, not commuting is going to save you anywhere. I mean, unless you just are that lucky that you work 6 minutes away from your house, but most of us, that saves us an hour to 2, 3, 4 hours a day. And the other thing is, so you're going to see an increase in remote jobs, and that can save you a ton of time. What else can save you a ton of time, I think, is really looking at roles where you are able to even leverage work from home. So even if it's not a completely remote job, just having the flexibility of, 2 days a week you can work from home, that's going to build you in, 3 or 4 hours a week extra that you can really capitalize on.
Yes. Good nuggets. I think one of the things, just to add, that is going to be important, just like we talked about having a job search strategy, you need to have your business strategy, right? So you need to be clear on what, from an income and revenue perspective, what are the goals for your business? What do you need it to reach in order for you to sort of retire from a full-time role? And what are the path? What are the strategies that you will need to deploy in order to get there? And then you can understand, how much time do I need to carve in order to do that? So then how much time do I have to dedicate to another job? What type of job? How much do I need to earn on this job in order to invest in my new business? And be very intentional and strategic about that job search, and sort of what you take on during that time. And if your business is one of those where the path forward is probably quick, you just need a little bit more income and your credit is good, right? Go find you some credit options, right? If you can ramp up your business in a year or 6 months, and you want to give it a shot, go find some credit, take that risk, a lot of companies give you the opportunity to take a sabbatical, you could take a leave of absence, right? Leverage some of those benefits that many people forget about. Get you a line of credit open. If you've got a house, you can take on home equity line, things like that, right? If you're in good standing, right? If you have the credit and some savings that can allow you to take a little bit of risk from a leveraging perspective for a business that you think you can ramp up relatively quickly, because some businesses do require a lot of time and attention, right? You won't get off the ground. You will pitter and potter if you're trying to do it on the side. But if you're super invested and you know that you can grow this, then that's just a sacrifice you make, a risk you take to apply some leverage, add a little bit more leverage into your financial portfolio so that you can quickly ramp up and get that off of the ground. And of course, if it doesn't work, then come back and we start the job search again, right? You got to take the risk if you want the reward. So all is not over if you fail, right? But you got to be willing to take the risk.
Yeah. And I want to add to that even if, because I know, I jokingly tell people all the time that before I started my business, I was certainly not an entrepreneur. But I think that's a similar strategy that we also have to employ with our own, even if you're going to work for a company, right? I know so many clients that I say, well, why don't you, they say, I need this certification, but my company won't pay for it. And I'm sort of like, okay, how much is it? And they're like, I don't know, $1,200. And I'm like, well, do you have a credit card? Like, when we start to talk about what ways they can come up with $1,200, but it's like, they just never, the notion of investing in themselves was not something that they've ever thought about. The idea that they would take risks, and I think there's a difference between, jumping out of a plane with no parachute and having done 12 weeks of skydiving classes and having a tandem jump. Those are different sets of risks, right? And so the same thing for your business. I'm not telling you go and hang your shingle and not have done any market research or not know what the pricing models could look like and so forth and so on. But I am saying, if you're in a good position, I think your point about take the risk, take the shot, shoot your shot. Yeah. I think the other piece is, I really want folks to do, there was a point you made that folks need to pay attention to, which is research. Stop asking and answering your own questions. Folks are always doing that. Oh, I wouldn't qualify. Well, have you applied? Well, when I say, well, how much do you need to start your business? I need a lot of money. Well, what's a lot? They don't know, because they've allowed that, I'm going to call it reason, which can be disguised, which is an excuse disguised as legitimate. But if you're not doing your research and getting information, because I think so often you are further along than you think. Yes. You're closer than you think. When you actually get out and start getting the information and not just assuming and asking and answering your own questions. Yes. So go out and and talk to other business owners that do such similar things to what you want to do. You know, if you listen to me, I remember when I was starting, and we've talked about this, but when we were starting our business, it was like, oh, I need to hire a graphic designer to do a website and a logo. And then it was kind of like, you know what? All of that needs to happen and it'll come. But right now I can go with the logo from Canva, and I can do my own website through GoDaddy, Wix, whoever. And that'll get me kind of operational. Now, in a year or two, when money is flowing and all of those things are happening for me, if I want to go out then and hire a graphic designer to customize a logo for me, fantastic. But right now, for the sake of getting something out there and starting something, and you won't know what you really need until you've actually gone out and started to see. And how about this? If you had told me 6 months ago that creating a target market list, like almost like a business development person would do for you or whatever, I would have told you I needed thousands of dollars to generate those kinds of lists. I was on Fervor the other day. Literally, there's a guy on Fervor who is saying he can get, for me, 100 potential contacts from like a marketing list for $20. I find new and creative ways to mess up $20 on my own, right? Like I do. I mean, what is that? I can eat $20 at Chipotle. My point is that we think these things are expensive, but they don't have to be. And we don't know that they don't have to be until we go out and do the work to find out that actually whatever number you thought you had in your head isn't really what the number actually is.
Yes, good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so we are going to wrap up now. Thanks everyone that watched. Let us know in the comments if you found this helpful. Let us know if there's some other questions that you have burning on the inside that you would like for us to answer next. We are contemplating a live version of this next so that you guys can ask in real time. And so if that's something you're interested in, let us know. We'd love to get you looped in on this conversation. Thank you for joining us. Do you have any parting words, Samantha?
No, life is too short for us not to be living our best lives, enjoying the things that we really want to do, spending quality time with our families and our friends. There's no reason to go to jobs that we hate. There's no reason for us to keep going to job after job that keeps us in this rabbit hole of, toxicity or unhappiness. So we really can create the careers we want to create. And I encourage everybody to go out and really make your best life, live your best life. Decide today that enough is enough. And April 1st, which is a great, for so many reasons, a great line in the sand, that this ends today and you're going to make some real choices, like, being part of your community or, hiring you directly or hiring me directly to really start to live the life that you want to live.
Yes, because you've earned it and you deserve it. And, especially if we think about the world of COVID-19 right now, it would be a tragedy to come out on the other end of this having just survived, having not used this time to really reflect and reevaluate what's important to us and start to develop the strategy for how we want to spend the rest of our time, the rest of our days on the other end. So working on that post-COVID-19 strategy is super essential. What's your ideal life? What do you want to be doing? What are you called to do? And let's figure out how to help you get there.
Yeah, go live in and on purpose.
Yes. All right, guys. Until next time, we will catch you later. Thanks for joining.